I want to share a hint or a tip that may help you close your groups up at longer distances. What I'm going to talk about is creeping. Yeah, creep 101. So what is creeping? Creeping is when you're at full draw, you're on the wall, meaning you've pulled the bow back until it hits a stopping point. You relax, you mentally prepare to release the arrow, and then you squeeze the trigger and the arrow is gone. So what happens during that time? Well, we think we're on the wall, but sometimes we can relax a little bit too much, and what happens is we're creeping. We're actually coming forward a little bit without even realizing it. So what happens when we creep? Well, I was kind of wondering that a few years ago, and I had a bow shooting machine at the time where it takes out all human error. It shoots the bow itself, and it uses a syringe to squeeze and release. So anyway, to test this concern that I had, with a bow shooting machine, you can shoot arrow holes inside of arrow holes up to so many yards. So at 15 yards, I would shoot one arrow and then pull the arrow, and without the bow shooting machine moving at all, shoot another arrow, and it will go perfectly inside the same arrow hole. And how did I accomplish that? Well, so if you're drawing your bow back, and let's say you stop at this point every single time, and this was at 15 yards inside my shop, controlled environment, no wind, nothing like that to affect the arrow flight. So at 15 yards, I'd shoot one arrow and I'd go and pull it. I'd wind the bow back again and I would stop right at the exact same spot. And I mean exact, because I would draw a little tick mark at the on the bar where I would stop at. In doing so, I would hit the exact same arrow hole. So the black circle is your arrow hole, where the blue is just the arrows going right inside the same arrow hole. So what happens when we creep? Well, a lot of people think, well, it's okay to creep a little bit to get in the valley. 20 yards, you're not going to see a whole lot of group diameter difference. And maybe even at 30, but it will start showing up more at 30. But especially when you get past 30 and you start shooting 40, 50, 60, whatever yards, you will see those groups open up. So if I were to draw the bow back on the bow shooting machine again, and this time, if I stopped right there, which is just a touch, maybe a 30-second in front of the spot that I drew the bow back before, what happens? Well, the arrow, the blue represents the arrow that was shot at that point. The arrow will still hit the arrow hole, the previous arrow hole, but it will not hit exactly in that arrow hole. So I found that really interesting. I thought, well, I wonder if that was just a fluke. Let me try it again. So I would pull the arrow, and I had my exact arrow hole marked, or I would either go to a new spot on the target, and I would shoot a new arrow hole, and then do what I'm about to tell you in that new arrow hole to make sure there was no error on my part. So if I drew the bow back to that one spot again, which was just a touch in front of the original anchor point, sure enough, the arrow will hit just a little bit outside that arrow hole. Now, it may not hit to the left. It may hit a little high, a little right, whatever. But it's very minute. It's something you're not going to notice when you're shooting at 15, 20, 25, 30 yards maybe. Well, again, if I drew the bow back and I did not stop at the same exact anchor point, and let's say this time I released the arrow when I was holding just a touch in front of that one. No, come on, right? I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, I'm just moving a little more forward, because that's what we tend to do when we're at full draw. Especially the longer we're trying to really aim, we are relaxing and creeping forward. Now, here comes the controversy. A lot of you are going to say, no, I don't do that. Well, we're humans, and I have not met a person yet that does not creep. And I've proven that, because the people that come in the shop and tell me they don't creep, I just perform a little test. And sure enough, they creep, and they're like, wow, I had no idea that I'd do that. And what I do is I get them to draw their bow back and tell me when they're ready to shoot. And when they say they're ready, I'll make a mark on the arrow lined up with some portion of the riser or the rest of the bow. Then I'll tell them to shoot or let the bow down. And we'll do this maybe 5 times. Draw the bow back, tell me when you're about to squeeze the trigger, and they say, okay, I make another mark on the arrow. So when all is said and done with, I show them the arrow, and you may have 3 or 4 different marks on that arrow within 3/8 of an inch difference of each other, which means you're creeping. So again, there's going to be people that say they don't creep. Well, I want to shake your hand if you're one of them, because I've yet to meet a person that doesn't creep. I've been shooting bows for many, many years, and do my best to do everything right each shot, but I know I creep. It's just part of life, because we're not a machine. We're not that bow shooting machine. You're going to creep. So anyway, let's say I draw the bow back again, and this time I even relax a little more, and my anchor point is just a little bit further forward. Let's say instead of a 32nd, we're going up to a 1/16 of an inch, or 3/8 of an inch maybe. Depends on the length of the valley. Well, then that arrow impacts even a little bit further out of that original arrow hole. So the whole goal here is try not to creep, because if you do creep, your groups will open up. I guarantee it. I promise it. I've seen it. I've tested it, and I've proved it. Creeping will cause your groups to open up. Now, you're going to tell me, yeah, but at 20 yards, I'm breaking nocks, or even at 30 yards, I'm breaking nocks. So 20, 30 yards, that's fine, because you may shoot 5 arrows in a group like that, and you're not going to know, if you would have hit the same arrow hole or not, because your arrows are touching each other. But the further out you go, and those groups start opening up, and you start wondering why your groups were opened up, and you know your bow is tuned, and you think you made a great shot, you think everything was consistent. Well, probably one of the problems is that you're creeping a little bit, because this is going to show up. It's going to magnify the further away you go, the longer yardage that you shoot. So how do we try to prevent ourselves from creeping? The best advice I can give that helps me more than anything is when I draw my bow back and I hit that wall, I try not to relax too much. I try not to fall right in the center of that valley, because guaranteed creep when you do. I try to stay hard on that wall, and then let my brain do the rest of the work to release the arrow properly. But I do notice when I'm relaxing, and one way to tell if you relax too much, all once your shoulder gets jerked forward and you realize, whoa, I was really creeping a long way on that time. But as long as I stay hard on that wall and make my shots, my groups, they stay really tight. Even, I'm talking 100 yards, my groups really do better. Or 50, 60, 70 yards, whatever you want to shoot. My groups stay tight as long as I stay on that wall pretty firmly. Now you may be thinking, yeah, but I'm pulling too hard on the wall. Well, I don't think you are. I think you may originally pull too hard on the wall, and as you're holding it, you are relaxing just a little bit because you're trying to make a shot. So do your best to stay pretty firm on the wall, whether the wall be a limb stop or a cable stop. If your draw length stop on the cam hits the cable and that's your wall, that's fine. Which is one reason I'm not crazy about cable walls, so to speak. But they are better. Some of the newer bows, when you draw back and you hit a cable, you hit the cable with your draw length stop, it does feel pretty firm today compared to what it used to feel. So I have less concern about it than I did years ago. Now, many years ago, back when I was shooting the World Pro Circuit, we had what I consider a really long valley, and we thought that was great because you could just get back there and relax and move forward or whatever and shoot. But our bows back then, they weren't as fast and as strong as the bows today, so there was less error when you did creep. But today, as fast as these bows are and as strong as they are, any amount of human error you put into that shot, it's going to show up right here. So anyway, that's my tip for today. Just try to stay firm on that wall and don't creep. And in doing so, your groups will be tighter at longer distances. Cheers.